federal officials are spending, the hard-earned tax dollars of Canadians, right? So, and the thing that really does make it worse is that they won't come clean about it, right? That they keep taking these steps to try and hide what's been going on.
Hey everyone, you're listening to the Canadian Taxpayers Podcast. I'm Franco Terrazzano, your federal director and spokesperson for the CTF out here in Ottawa. And I'm joined by our new investigative journalist, Mr. Ryan Thorpe. Ryan, you dug up another big taxpayer story, didn't you? And because of some of the action of our CTF supporters, we're going to be taking some legal action against the Trudeau government. So why don't you break down your story and some of the next steps from our advocacy?
Yeah, Franco. So we are here at the CTF. We're taking legal action to make the Prime Minister come clean on who spent $6,000 per night on a hotel room in London during the Queen's funeral. So just as a quick refresher, last September, Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral in London, someone in the Canadian delegation stayed in a $6,000 per night hotel room at the Corinthia Hotel. So this is the so-called River Suite. And the government doesn't want taxpayers to know who stayed in that room. So we filed a simple access to information request asking who stayed in the $6,000 per night hotel room. We got a response back, but it was redacted. So now we're taking legal action to force the feds to reveal who stayed in that room.
Folks, these government bureaucrats gave us a response back. They wrote down the name, then they blacked it out. Now they wasted your money. They owe you transparency. So Ryan, break down for our listeners there exactly what's going on with our legal challenge.
So we filed a challenge with the Information Commissioner. So by redacting the ATIP, the government is bending the rules to withhold information from taxpayers. And quite frankly, we're not going to let them get away with that. So the bureaucrats cited two sections of the relevant legislation that governs access to information in Canada, Section 16 and 19. Now, those sections relate to security concerns and the release of personal information. Right. But if someone works for taxpayers and spends taxpayers' money, they're legally responsible to be accountable and transparent about it to taxpayers. And the law is clear that information like this doesn't constitute personal information under the legislation. This is a clear attempt to kind of skirt the rules that are in place. Global Affairs could have asked the individual who stayed in that room whether it was okay to release the information. I think it's a fair question to say, did they ask? What did the person say about this? And then as regards to the security claim, the Queen's funeral happened 5 months ago. So I don't think that particular rationale passes the sniff test.
Yeah, I mean, unless the government is worried that the Terminator is going to travel back in time, I think it's safe to say we can safely disclose who stayed in that $6,000 per night hotel room in London, England. And oh, by the way, the Governor General has already said that it wasn't her who stayed in this $6,000 per night River Suite. So if it wasn't the Governor General, I don't think we need to hire Sherlock Holmes to get to the bottom of this mystery. But it is a matter of principle. They wasted our money. They need to be transparent about it. And we're not going to let the government bend the rules to withhold information from taxpayers. No, 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 no. So, Ryan, let's take a little step back and let's tell our listeners just how luxurious this River Suite is.
Yeah, well, kudos to the Toronto Sun for first digging up details on this. So back when this story first broke, the Toronto Sun reported the delegation had expensed nearly $400,000 in hotel costs alone. And this included the $6,000 per night River Suite at the Corinthia Hotel. So the Corinthia is described as one of the top luxury hotels in central London. And the $6,000 per night suite boasts a view of the River Thames, a marble bathroom, and complimentary butler service.
So sounds nice.
Yeah, it's also noting that there were several other, top chef hotels in the area that the Canadian delegation could have stayed at. The Four Seasons, the Langham, the Savoy, even the Shangri-La, and they all offer prices when checked that came in lower than the Corinthia did, and which is what taxpayers ultimately got billed for.
You know, as much as we might joke about this, we're not saying that the prime minister or the governor general needs to stay in the motel by the airport. What we're saying is that when you could have saved money by staying at the Four Seasons or the Shangri-La, then you really spare no expense, and all this coming at the taxpayer tab as well. Now, Ryan, at least from my perspective, it seems like a big issue within this story is that covering up wasteful spending like this is becoming the rule, not the exception.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Franco. I mean, spending $6,000 per night on a single hotel room is an obvious example of this, what you're pointing to, right? Living high on the hog while traveling internationally. But this is a reoccurring theme on some of these stories that have been breaking recently about how federal officials are spending, the hard-earned tax dollars of Canadians, right? So, and the thing that really does make it worse is that they won't come clean about it, right? That they keep taking these steps to try and hide what's been going on. So this is only one of many recent examples. Brian Lilly, a Toronto Sun columnist, just broke another big story that's related to this one. He got back some A-tips from the government's delegation's trip to New York for the United Nations General Assembly. We know the hotel costs there totaled up to nearly $189,000. But other than that kind of total overall price tag, the records that were released revealed next to nothing. So the government is once again citing security concerns for the reasons why they can't release details that the public is entitled to know about, right? Once again, the event already happened. Bringing up security concerns is just a total red herring.
Yeah, certainly doesn't pass the sniff tests. But look, hey, another example, right? You talked about the news story broke by Brian Lilly at the Toronto Sun. But remember the other story that we've been hammering left, right, and center, the Governor General's Middle East trip all the way back in March 2022.
Yeah. And so in that case, they racked up nearly six figures on fancy airplane food, right? So government bureaucrats, they misleadingly downplayed the wasteful spending by offering up kind of half-truths to government rather than meaningful reforms. The Governor General herself said the meals are not very extravagant on these trips, and they're pretty much like airplane food or regular airplane meals. Well, at a parliamentary committee, Simon's deputy secretary said the costs were really shocking because we had eggs, we had omelets. Bureaucrats repeatedly told the committee that they could not provide the in-flight catering receipts, that these mysteriously had disappeared. But the only problem with that was that the CTF, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, had already obtained them.
Yeah,
right?
Sure did.
Yeah, and what those showed was it wasn't the regular airplane food that average Canadians are used to. That they were dining on beef Wellington, beef carpaccio, stuffed pork tenderloin, and other, meals that would sound like you could read them off the dining menu of like a fine dining restaurant. Not
at the River Suite.
Maybe at the River
Suite. Hey, well, Ryan, hey, man, great job. Great digging. Folks, let me just remind you that Ryan has been in this job for about 15 minutes, and he's already breaking these stories and holding these big spending politicians and bureaucrats accountable. I only wish they would just spend 1/10 of the time actually keeping an eye on their spending as they do spending time covering up their wasteful spending. So folks, at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we're going to hold these government bureaucrats, whoever stayed in that $6,000 per night hotel room, accountable. We're not going to let them bend the rules to withhold information from you. No. And if you want to get involved in this fight, well, that'd be great. Head over to taxpayer.com, learn how you can get involved, and also check out that great story that Ryan dug up.